Thank you for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers, or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend. All right, guys, so now let's go ahead and move on to number 3, spending too much time talking tools versus talking about the processes of training, right? So let's go ahead and kind of define this a little bit, because a lot of newer dog trainers, obviously, kind of going back to methods and defending things, when we have tools that we really like, and let's say, for example, we're one-trick ponies. We only work with a specific pinch collar, a choke chain, or a slip lead, or whatever it might be.
Food, toys,
food, or you work with food, or you work with clickers, whatever your method is that you're stuck to, or the tools associated to your method is, it's sometimes we talk too much about tools, and we talk too much sometimes about like jargon, and we talk too much about terminology, like, positive versus negative reinforcement, or we start talking about, conditioned reinforcers, or we just start talking about things that we heard in a book and we saw in a video.
Can I just say something really quick? I'm so sorry to cut you off, but as you were saying this just now, I'm thinking back to the state of dog training today. Marketing, what's huge, pure positive. It's so easy to it's such an easy pill to swallow. It's so palatable. Tell me how you feel about this. R plus training spends way more time talking about the process of training than the average balance trainer does. Now, they do it in a way that still, the tool is food, but also the learning process is food. So they spend more time actually talking training, whereas people are like, no, well, let me show you the e-collar, let me show you the prong collar, where they're like, no, the thing is, you want to mark things on time, you want to jackpot, you want to keep the dog motivated, you want to that's an interesting thought.
That sounds cool, right? And I think good. That's a great epiphany you had. Because the other part, the opposite of talking about tools is we talk about the process of training, right? And so things like I was taught, right? You normally, I would say 95% of my consultations and phone calls, we never talk about tools. Right. We never talk about them, right? Like the idea of tools only, like whatever tool I decided to use on that dog for that project, it's new to the owner when they get it. So how does that happen? Let's talk about how is it that I can close a deal with someone, right? Or educate a new customer or a rescuer and not even have to bring up tools, right? How can I do it? So what I do, I'm going to teach you guys all my secrets on this podcast.
Yeah.
But what I do and what I've done, and maybe some of you guys already do this, we talk about the process of transformation, right? Where your dog is, where your dog needs to be. Shout out to Corey Chavez, because what he does is he does a reverse engineering of the behaviors that they want versus the behaviors that they have now, right? And so what we do is I kind of do something similar, but what we do is we talk about the process of transformation, where your dog is now and where the dog needs to be, right? So I kind of do it more as a narrative. And so we talk about, so in order to tell this story the best that I can to a client, I need to know what their house is like. I need to know what kind of issues they're dealing with. I need to know the dog's temperament, what good experiences, bad experiences they had. And so what I'm doing is I'm collecting all this data in my head to really understand their issues, right? And as we know, as dog trainers, sometimes we get the same case, like is this echo of the same case over and over and over. It's a puppy, no structure, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But especially when you're doing in-person sales or education, it is so important to connect and be present with those owners, right? Because on a very human level, if they trust me and they know that I care about them and that I know and I care about their dog, that they are more likely to take whatever advice and criticism that I give them, right? Or if I give them advice, they will take it more seriously if they know me and they trust me, right? And I used to do so many cold sales, people walking into my facility, and I would go and I would close them literally on the spot, right? And so the way I do it, I get to know everything that's wrong. I get to know about them, their family. I figure out, where they live. And I'm just a chatty guy. So I like to talk to them and I figure all this. And in my head, I am putting a story together. Okay. Second thing I start doing is I start educating them I start qualifying myself. So I start
Mhm.
educating them a little bit on, okay, what is it that I see wrong? Like, what are the main top 3, top 5 things I see wrong with their story and where things could be better? So now
Mhm.
all of a sudden I'm giving them these nuggets of expertise where they go, oh, so I should crate the dog. Yeah, this is why you should crate. You crate the dog because he has too much freedom. He's peeing all over the place. He's biting the kids all the time. Crate him, right? Just as an example.
Right, right,
I
right.
also think that your dog should not be on a harness right now because it seems to be making the pulling worse. So
Mhm.
they go, oh, so what would you put on? Well, we'll get to that a little bit later, or I'll deflect it, or I'll say, right, put the dog on a collar. The
Mhm.
big key is the dog just shouldn't be choking himself,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So people go, oh, right. Then I might, say number 3 of the top 3 things that's wrong with the picture, and then I say, but most importantly, your dog just lacks patience, or your dog lacks self control, or your dog makes silly impulsive decisions and he doesn't know any better. And they go, yeah, you're so right. And so what we're doing here in stage 2 is I'm qualifying my expertise. I'm qualifying that I'm present. I'm qualifying that I'm connected and I know all your problems.
Right,
So
right.
now all of a sudden trust is even stronger.
Right. I'm
Now,
listening to you. I hear you.
I hear
Let
you.
me help you.
I see you, and I
Right.
understand you.
And I have
Okay.
what you need.
And I have it. I got what you need, right? And then the next stage ultimately is from those things. Then maybe I ask them, okay, what have you guys tried? Right. So then I'll kind of have them tell me, well, we've tried this, we've tried that, we've tried this, we've tried this trainer. Or some of them go, we've done nothing. And I
Right,
go,
right,
all right, so you guys don't know what to do. All
right.
right. So usually when people explain to me, like, what have you guys tried? They go, oh, I tried this one trainer. We did all these clickers. We did all these, or we put this one trainer had a prong collar. And I'm reading
Mhm.
how they're reacting to these tools. When they say prong collar, are they saying it with regret? When
Right.
they say food trainer, are they saying that, oh, this was a waste of time, or are they saying it, I really like the food,
Mhm.
right? And so what stage 3 is allowing me to do, it's allowing me to see what they've tried, where they are mentally with this idea of training. Like, are they experienced, are they not experienced, do they have biases, do they not have biases? And what this allows me to do, this allows me to figure out an angle I can approach my recommendation process, which is my last stage. Okay. Because if I straight up go in and say, you know what your dog needs, an e-collar, a pinch collar, a choke chain, automatically, if I go in and I skip all those 3 other steps, automatically they're just going to put their hands up and be like, get out of my face. I don't want you as my
Right.
trainer. Right.
Right.
So in stage 3, I'm getting a read for how I should approach my recommendation stage, which is number 4. Right. So my recommendation stage, this is now where, again, I'm not talking about tools. We're talking about processes. We're talking about how we're going to go ahead and move forward in fixing your problems, right? So it could be something like this. All right. Well, we have to change your whole management system at the house. Like, all the habits that your dog has inside the home needs to be adjusted. And so that's where we kind of talk about some of the stuff that we talked about with Larry Crone, right? How 80% of it is behavior. Your dog is
Right.
on the couch. Why is your dog begging? Why is your dog? So we have to adjust these things. My job is to coach you through them so you understand. So your dog understands that you guys make the rules in the house, and when the dog is following those rules, we can give him the love, we can give him the praise, we can give him the affection, we can give him the treats. So I'm not saying we're going to take everything away from your dog. I'm saying we're going to take everything away or control things so that we can give it to you, so that you can give it to him when he's being good,
Right.
right?
We'll give it to him
Which
in a way that's beneficial or at least not detrimental.
that's not detrimental, right? But look
Right.
at it. Now we're talking about the process, as you talked about with the R plus community or the force free community, they talk about the process.
Right.
I'm going to I'm going to control these things so I can leverage them to make things positive for your dog. Right. So management systems, crating, leash on your dog, don't let it, house rules, boundaries, all those things. And then we teach them how to do that. Then we might talk about, okay, obedience. So what do we got to do? This is the process of obedience we have to work on. 3 basic components of obedience. We got to teach your dog to focus a lot better on cue. We got to teach your dog to control themselves on cue. And number 3, we got to teach your dog to make better decisions, period. Okay. And so the only way that we can do that is through trial and error, trial and error. We teach your dog what's expected of them. Then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to teach your dog how to prioritize between what he wants and what we're asking him to do. Now,
Mhm.
if what he wants is something desirable, like something that's appropriate for him, well, we will always guarantee him that if it's appropriate for him. Right. If he does the right thing, he's going to get that thing. Right. And so then, so then we kind of just go through the process. Again, we're explaining the process, and people, and am I lying in any of this, guys, as dog trainers? Like, I mean, I can't hear you guys, what you're saying right now, but I'm not lying. What I'm doing though, is I'm talking to them about the process, because me as a dog trainer, right, at my skill set now, I don't know if I'm using a pinch collar on that dog. I don't know if I'm using a star mark. I don't know if I'm using a slip lead. I don't know if I'm using, an e-collar. I don't know any of these things yet, because I haven't even laid hands on that dog.
Right, you haven't put hands on the dog.
I haven't even put hands on that dog. I don't know if this is going to be a week of food work, if this is going to be 3 weeks of, I don't know any of this stuff. And so I can't be tool specific, because I don't know necessarily what's going to work best on this dog. There's been times that I've put pinch collars on a puppy and he freaked the fuck out.
Right.
Freaked the fuck out. So I had to work that dog on a slip lead for 2 weeks just so he doesn't shut down. Right. There's been times that I put a slip lead on a puppy and he's choking himself out for 2 sessions. And I'm like, all right, well, we gotta try something different.
Kick it up a little bit.
Right? Yeah, we got to kick it up a little bit. There's been times that I've put a pinch collar on a Mastiff and I was like, let's go. And I'm cranking and yanking and this dog doesn't feel shit. Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that until I started putting hands on that dog. So go ahead.
It's funny how much these tools can finesse. It's funny how, like, even if you were to go with a tool that would be good, only it's too much. Like I was working a dog today who he loves to argue back with the prong collar. He'll grab the leash and do the whole thing and barrel roll and all that good stuff.
Right.
So based on that versus more sparsed out, even stim of like an e-collar, I know he'd do well with an e-collar only. And it's actually a cattle dog. And I remember the cattle dog that you had in LA.
I love cattle dogs.
Very sensitive to the collar.
Yep.
So there's those like 50% stim reducers. There's always an answer, but you have to get a little, little technical with it. I just wanted to bring up a point. There are times where either you already know for some reason or another that a certain tool will be better for the dog, or at least that whatever the owners are currently doing isn't going to work for the dog moving forward. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about how you can go about desensitizing the owner / the dog to that particular tool. And here's what I mean. I've had a lot of success in the past with a dog, and these are like several dogs, but like with a dog in general, who they meet the trainer recommends e-collar, which I don't think they were wrong for the recommendation necessarily. It's just the way they went about it was all wrong. So now the owners have gone a couple lessons or, whatever the case, and they don't like this trainer. They just kind of politely brush him out the door and never call him back. And now they've got a sour taste in their mouth about the e-collar, even though the e-collar would end up being the ultimate, like the best tool for this particular dog and this situation in the house. So what I've gotten really good at is getting them comfortable again. And what I had to do in that case was they talked to me about what the trainer did. This is something you can't get wrong, or at least I don't think so. Don't slam the trainer. Even if you disagree with what he did or whatever the case, I would just kind of like, oh, okay. So here was the story. People get a cattle dog mix. He's reactive. So the trainer went to boundary setting. I get it, right? Only the problem is they put the dog on an e-collar, brought him to the park, and then fucked him up when he was lunging and growling at people, like day one. So they were telling me this story, and like you said earlier, just the way that they're said, the words that they're choosing to describe what was happening and everything else, I can tell how they feel about it. I can tell how they feel about him. I can tell how they feel about all of it. So I'm listening and I go, wow, yeah, that's, and I just tell them, I'm like, yeah, boundary setting. And they go, yeah, that's what he was saying. I'm like, yeah, I get it. Here's what we need to do. Let's take a step backwards. Let's get into our foundational stuff. Let's teach the dog what we need before we start holding him accountable for things he doesn't know. That's not fair, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is, and they're sitting there too, like, yeah, oh, okay, that makes sense, And if they want the specifics, oh, well, let's try some food, let's try some toys, let's try some this, let's try some that,
Yep.
Tell me what the dog likes. I know what he doesn't like,
Yeah.
People, right? And they're like, well, he does really good he loves his frisbee. Oh, cool. Can I see it?
Mm-hmm.
And I just see the dog pep right up, even though I'm a stranger too,
Mm-hmm.
and dog's like, oh, hey, stranger, you got a Frisbee. Can I play?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you see that?
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be
Mm-hmm.
our in right here, you know?
Yep.
And from there, we start talking about, okay, but guys, here's the thing. I don't think that the e-collar was the wrong way to go. I just think that we needed to do some foundational work before we go to the park.
Yep.
And then I start describing that process. And then
Scaffoldings.
I got them back on board with
Mm-hmm.
e-collar. They were not feeling it. They were ready to return it and all that good stuff.
Well, and that's because you listened and you adjusted your approach.
Right.
You
Right.
listened and you adjusted your approach. And that's, go ahead. Sorry, you're gonna say something.
No, 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 you're good. I just
Oh,
I just wanted to make the point that these
no, I
people.
think and we've all been in that situation, right? Like we have to sometimes make up for that person's fuck up. You
Oh
know
yeah.
what I mean? As a trainer, right? And even though, there's so many times we get those clients that say, I went to this trainer and that trainer and yada yada yada, as we were talking about in stage 3 of the process, like yeah, sometimes you have to approach things very different than that. I've met people that I go, yeah, just put I read them and I'm like, yeah, we're just going to stick a training collar on this dog and give him a couple corrections and he'll be all
Right.
right,
Right. Right.
And they're like, really? I said, yeah, let's try it. And I do it, boom, 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 one session. They're like, oh my gosh, yeah, let's sign up for a package,
Right.
but,
Right.
but there's a certain type of read on people. And I think as much as we are dog trainers, having good reads on people and having good reads on what they're willing to do and where they're at and their heads, it's going to be super, super important. So I want to move on from this. I think this was a good, I want to go maybe to some other the bullet points, but just to recap kind
Sure.
of my process, you guys can totally steal it if it helps you. Um, I qualify, I find out everything wrong going on with them. I make them open up to me, right? And tell me everything. And through that, you're going to find a lot of little nuggets of information that are going to help you guys figure out your approach. Number 2, I drop them with a couple experience-based golden nuggets of knowledge. Pretty much, I identify the problem areas as I see them,
Mm-hmm.
and I give them very quick, simple solutions. So, yeah, well, you know what? Your dog's biting your kids. Let's put them, somewhere else in the house, maybe a baby gate. Let's put that up, and that'll prevent the biting from your kids, right? Your
Right.
dog's pulling on the harness. Well, we're probably going to change it to a collar. Oh, which collar? I don't know yet. But definitely we need to teach your dog to not pull on leash. That's number
Right.
1, right?
Right.
And then, oh, your dog's fearful of things. Well, let's focus a little bit on socialization, maybe some exposure. But this is what we're seeing. This is a lack of socialization issue. Would make sense because Irby, for the first 6 months that you had him, you didn't take him outside of the house. So that's a lack of socialization issue. So what I'm doing is I'm identifying the core problems, not all the problems, because there's a lot of little problems, but
Right.
the top 3, the top 5 problems as I see them. So
Right.
that way they go, you're right. That is what's wrong. And a lot of times in that process, you say something that they go, oh no shit, I wasn't even thinking about that. Right. And when you blow people's minds, or when you open their eyes to things, they're automatically like they're all of their attention is on you. Right.
Yeah,
But
no, I agree with you, and I think a fun little it's not a trick, but it's just something I think that trainers tend to do when there's because you can't sit there and talk about all the dog's problems to be there forever.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what you're getting at is you talk about the major problems that kind of trickle into the little problems,
Yeah.
and it's a really fun little thing you do where like you talk about a few of the major problems and then you just give them that little nugget of like, yeah, and this leads to all these other little things, and I
Yep.
just leave it at that. I'll say
Yep.
exactly that, and
Mm-hmm.
then they fill in the blanks in their heads and they're like, oh
Uh-huh.
shit, you're right,
Yeah. Yep.
and
Yep.
but they
Yep.
they want the more, like they want to hear you say it and you just keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're in that position of like, well, tell me more, like what's
Yeah.
next, and then
Yep.
you're like,
Yep. Yep.
well,
So then stage 3 is maybe I'll ask them what they've tried or what they've been doing to fix those problems that I mentioned.
right,
Right. Now, maybe they tell you that in the first step, right? Where some people just talk, 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 talk. They give you all the information. But what I'm really trying to figure out is where is this person uh, mentally in regard, what's their relationship to the process of training? So number 3 is figure out what their relationship is in the process. Are they novice? Do they have a bias? Are they completely ignorant and know nothing? So are they a blank
right,
slate? Or is this an experienced dog owner who is, who's had 6 German Shepherds and he's ready for you to fucking throw a choke chain on this dog and crank and yank this dog, right? I've met those
right,
for
right,
sure. They're always in their 60s and 70s.
yeah,
But so that's number 3. And then number 4 is make your recommendations, but talk about the transformation process. Talk
right,
about how the dog needs to go from point A, which is his bad behavior, to point B, and what we need to develop in this obedience program. Is it confidence? Is it socialization? Is it focus? Is it self-control? Is it patience? Is it impulse control? And you talk to them about the things that they need to understand are lacking and how you're going to fix their problems for them, right?
Right.
And this whole time, we don't have to talk about tools. And we don't have to talk about tools because if you guys are, if someone asks you straight up, like ask me straight up, do I use pinch collars, Mariano?
Do you use pinch collars?
Yes.
Yeah.
Simple. The answer
Yeah.
is that simple. Do I use e-collars? Of course.
Yes.
Do I use e-collars on small puppies? No. Maybe if they're barking in the
I
crate
was gonna
and I've
say,
tried
yeah.
everything out. I did on
Right.
my puppy. I know that.
Yeah.
But do I shape a lot? Like so I can be very upfront. Yeah, I use those tools. I also use food. I also use clickers. I also use verbal markers. I also use toys. I also use a lot of things. And so I can shut that down real quick when people ask a silly question. Of course, I use everything. I'm a dog trainer. I use everything.
I'll tell you what else too before we move on is I noticed this. Maybe you'll agree with me. I noticed that instead of being like almost caught off guard by the question, do you use e-collars? Well, if you're just like, well, yeah, and you're just clear and upfront about it, they're like, oh, apparently it must be okay. Like they believe your clarity, your confidence, and like, yes, of course.
And what I do is I also explain, if I see that there's an aversion, I'll say, I want you guys to understand a training collar is a tool that's designed to
To do
actually do the minimum amount of pressure for your dog.
right.
So I know some of these things might look scary or they might sound weird because they're electric, or I know that it's around the dog's neck, but I need you guys to know, like, dogs grab each other by the neck and drag each other on the ground and they're having a blast.
Right.
So like the dog's neck is not as fragile as, let's say, our neck.
Right.
Right. And so when I explain those things, I go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So you just to keep that conversation open, because again, people don't want to hurt their babies and they rightfully so, right? No one wants to hurt their dogs. And as your point you made, I think, like, you have to say, like, I don't want to hurt your dog either.
Yeah.
If I hurt your dog, he's not going to like me, and I can't really train him if he doesn't like me. So it's pretty simple, right?
Yeah. I'm not here to hurt your dog. I'm here to get you from A to B. I'm here to get your dog into a better space. I'm here to help you solve this problem and understand that it is my job, it is my obligation, and it's frankly my like privilege and fun
and my passion
to be able to find the absolute best, easiest way to do that for him, for you, for everybody else. And that's why it's hard to really stick to one particular tool right now, because I don't know. I haven't touched him. I have no idea. You pop the hood and we'll find out what's going on. And I'll keep you posted along the way. But, I don't want you to focus too much on any one tool.
Yep, exactly. They're just tools.
Right.
Let's talk about the process.
Right. Let's talk about the job. Right.
Yeah, let's talk about what needs to happen. Perfect. Let's move on to number 4.